I'm Julia Turner, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest, the Naked Gun, and the Nearly Naked Momoa edition. It's Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, and on today's show, we're talking about the crowd-pleasing, critic-tickling reboot of the classic cop spoof, The Naked Gun. The new film stars Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson trading nonsensical quips and apparently falling in love. Has it rebooted the theatrical comedy? Then, the new Apple TV Plus show Chief of War tells the story of the unification of the Hawaiian Islands just as European and American explorers were beginning to drop anchor. It was created by and stars Jason Momoa, who wears many hats: writer, director, producer, and also a loincloth in many butt-bearing scenes. What happens when colonialism becomes IP? And then finally, we'll take a look at the 10th anniversary of Hamilton. The show made its debut on Broadway a decade ago. How's it aging? We'll discuss a New York Times article asking whether it's a naive relic of the Obama era or a more enduring portrait of the American project. Dana and Steve are off somewhere having Mai Tais, not together to my knowledge, but I am joined this week by two of our VFFOPs, Slate writer, that's very favorite friends of the program. First up, Slate writer and now game designer Dan Kois. Welcome, Dan.
Hey.
In what way are you a game designer?
We just launched a game I designed called Pairs on Slate.com.
And we're going to talk about it on Slate Plus as a little teaser. And then also other VFFOP, Slate culture writer Nadira Goffe. Welcome, Nadira.
Hi.
So glad to have you guys here. Let's show them how it's done.
What's the second F for?
Very favorite friend of the program.
Got it. Not very, very favorite of the... Got it.
No, not VVFOP, VFFOP.
This man made a word game.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Is there a worse idea for a movie than rebooting The Naked Gun? The first one came out in 1988, created by the legendary Zucker-Abraham-Zucker comedy trio, and starring Leslie Nielsen as cocksure and asinine detective Lieutenant Frank Drebin. And it is an unlikely, perfect comedy cream puff, so lunatic and so silly that it can't help but win you over. So perhaps the most striking thing to me about the new reboot from Akiva Schaffer, the director who's part of the Lonely Island trio, is that it works. Liam Neeson stars as Frank Drebin Jr. and sends up his action man image with glee. Pamela Anderson is Beth, the sister of a dead guy who worked for the bad guy, an Elon-type tycoon played by Danny Houston. In this clip, we hear some ludicrous flirtation between Drebin and Beth.
What if we had a little dinner together? I sure could go for a bite.
Slow down, Chef. This turkey burns at 450.
How hot was I cooking?
About 1,000. Turkey needs slow and low.
Unless you like your center pink.
No, I love my centers pink.
You're not worried the rare meat will ruin a good stuffing?
As long as you don't mind if I get salmonella.
Mind it. I prefer it. I like a sick little boy.
All right. In the run-up to the release of this film, there was much hand-wringing among the prognosticators about whether Gen Z, who's been starved from comedy spoofs all these years, would even comprehend this film with its mixed up genres and its lunatic pacing. Nadira, will you agree to be our resident Z or at least Zillennial on the show today?
Yes, I can agree to that. Though I don't know if we've been necessarily starved, but yes.
Well, okay. I hope you can hear the dripping condescension in my tone when I describe these pontificators. Was your mind blown? Did your head implode at comprehending this type of film? What did you make of the new Naked Gun? And I believe you confessed to us on the prep that you hadn't seen the original, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I haven't seen the original. I do love a spoof, scary movies, Airplane, Spinal Tap, Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping, one of my favorite movies. They're all great.
Directed by Akiva Schaffer, the director here.
halfway through watching this movie, I did have the realization that I think I laughed more during Materialists than I did during this movie, which is perhaps more to say about me than about the movie itself. I mean, I thought it was fine. I thought that some of the jokes worked. I thought that some of the jokes stayed too long. I thought that Pamela Anderson was for sure the best part. Every time she was on screen, she was hilarious, and I couldn't take my eyes off of her. But yeah, I guess, I don't know. I've always wondered where spoof's place is, and I think that to me, they feel like they work best when they're needed. And sure, this is a spoof movie, but it feels like a spoof of a cop movie still from, or half from 20 to 30 years ago, when, you know, leading cop media today is like Mayor of Easttown more than it is Beverly Hills Cop. And so I wanted more jokes like the PonziScheme.com arena that felt like they were more of today than, you know, sort of hearkening to tropes of yore. But I liked it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I was just kind of like, it's a movie.
But Nadira, when they would say a joke, were you like, what is this?
No, the references still tracked. And a part of it is probably because I, you know, grew up watching the movies that my mom wanted me to. But I still got all of the references. I was just kind of like, well, this is a reference to a movie that my mom showed me. Like, you know, like it was more of that feeling for most of the time. However, shout out to Janet Jackson. That bit was hilarious. And yeah, all of the pop culture stuff was still also really relevant to me.
Did you see it in a crowded theater?
It was, I want to say, a third full. I was for sure the youngest person in the theater. Everyone was laughing their heads off, and I felt so happy for them. I was like, this is what cinema, this is what cinema is for. This is the experience. My biggest gripe with this movie, I think, is that there's a joke about back when Catherine Zeta-Jones was electric, and she still is. Thank you very much. And so I felt actually personally offended by that. But other than that, yeah, it was fine. And I probably laughed the least of everyone in my theater, but I still had a good time.
All right, Dan, have I pegged you correctly as a middle-aged man who loved the original and found this new one delightful?
I mean, you have left an important aspect out, which is that I'm a middle-aged man who grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the most important pop culture figures ever to come out of our city are Zucker, Abrams, Zucker, proud Shorewood High graduates. So yes, I have a lot invested in the ZAZ canon, and spoofs were very important to me growing up. And the revival of them, I find the revival of them in theaters, I find a welcome development. I like that it's Akiva Schaffer who's doing this, because Pop Star, as you mentioned, Nadira, and Hot Rod are movies that, and the stuff, and the Lonely Island shorts are very indebted to this spirit of comedy, the spirit of dumb people who don't know they're in a comedy, saying ridiculous things and jokes, you know, blasting at you out of a fire hose. So as Nadira says, some of them work and some of them don't. In the ideal alchemy of a spoof, it doesn't matter that some of them don't, because there's going to be another one within seconds, and maybe that one will work, and you get sort of caught up in the spirit of the whole thing, laughing despite yourself in a way. This movie did most of the things that I wanted it to do. It's a movie that you can send, for example, 6 teenagers to and have them all come back 2 hours later and be like, that was great. It's a movie that has like lines and dumb things that will live in my head forever, in the way that It's My Beaver, I Just Had It Stuffed still lives in my head forever from 1986 or whatever. I will never, ever be able to hear someone mention UCLA without thinking, I see it all the time. I live here. I agree that Pamela Anderson is a real highlight. I sort of agree with you, Nadira, that the lack of necessity of this satire is a little bit glaring. Like, they're trying to do a thing where they are still spoofing cop movies of the 80s, but also sort of spoofing Taken and the Liam Neeson current oeuvre. But those movies like don't occupy the place in culture really that the cop movie once did, or the cop TV show. And so that didn't feel necessary exactly. But yet I saw it in a theater. I laughed a lot. My kids liked it. The teenagers we sent it to liked it. The surviving members of Zucker Abrams Zucker seemed perfectly happy with it. So I'm in a good place. But Julia, you are, I would say, an airplane aficionado bordering on maniac. You have an airplane poster in your home. How did you feel about this?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm more of a maniac. Airplane was one of the movies we owned on VHS growing up. So Airplane is probably, along with Sneakers and Network, the movie I've seen the most times in my life. And I'm pretty happy with that as a troika. My husband was more of a Naked Gun partisan growing up. And I have to confess that although the Airplane poster is better and more the one that I would like to hang in my home, Naked Gun is a movie that ages better than Airplane. Like the barrage of jokes, tonally, just Naked Gun works and builds in this incredible way. The original one that really holds up as a watch. I really liked this a lot. I enjoyed it. I laughed a ton. We took my sons to a crowded theater. My husband was very thrilled at the idea for them to finally see a comedy in a crowded theater. I was like, I'm the one who took them to the Minecraft movie, which certainly we all experienced as that, but okay. And we definitely all collectively lost our shit at a bunch of moments, including the romance montage where he falls for Pamela Anderson's character, and there is a cameo by a maniacal snowman. It functions, and the rhythms. As much as I am teasing the critics for how unusual or unexpected or incomprehensible the comic rhythms of this might be, it's true that like joke dense comedy of the kind that like is in The Simpsons, but also 30 Rock, like we do less of that now. The type of comedic style where it's just like there's so many jokes you laugh at the ones that hit you, and the ones that don't hit you, you kind of laugh at the frantic comic effort of them trying to make you laugh so hard. Like that is not what we're making right now as a culture broadly. And I think that was enjoyable too.
I just don't necessarily know where the ground is anymore, because I think a part of what works about this movie, are the parts that I liked, are based on references that someone who is a few years younger than me might actually just be out of the realm of understanding. Like, to me, one of the best jokes is when Busta Rhymes shows up and Liam Neeson is like, you have a really long rap sheet. That's just hilarious. Yeah. But, how many kids would understand that today?
Or the
would
long
know that,
Buffy TiVo reference.
Which I also love, which is incredible. And then I'm also thinking on the flip side, absurdism just kind of is the base these days. Kids are watching endless brain rot on YouTube. And so when you have like Skibbity Toilet, and that's what's occupying the minds of a 12-year-old, what then? How much more funny, or like in terms of absurdism and silliness, can you get when that's actually just kind of the main content that kids are watching today? And so I guess I wonder if we don't know where the ground is anymore in order to actually build these jokes, and if maybe that is sort of playing into where the sort of joke dense comedy has come from.
Right. It's not that the bar has been raised, it's that the floor has been lowered.
Yeah, or that there just is no floor. Yeah. Like we're just maybe just floating around in joke space and there's not much tangible to actually start from or connect to. And also I think that one of the larger parts of media today, or issues, is that people really struggle talking to a specific audience, right? They want to talk to everyone instead of actually honing in on one audience. And so maybe that also has a part to do with it. But yeah, I just wonder if maybe there isn't this sort of base that we can all agree on, that we're all standing on, where we can mount jokes off of.
Yeah, and actually maybe that's one of the things that suggests that this form can work for this moment. And we should say this has been a critical success and a modest box office success. It's performing well for this kind of film, although it's not like, it's not in Sinners territory. And in addition to never being able to hear UCLA the same way, I will be referring to the Staples Center /crypto.com arena as ponzischeme.com arena for the rest of my days. And I hope that if I have one legacy to leave on Los Angeles, it will be making everybody else do that too. I also really liked, I believe it's ponzi-scheme.com, which just makes it like even tackier and better.
Ponzischeme.com with no hyphen was already taken.
All right. The film is The Naked Gun. Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson are a cute couple, and you should probably check it out at some point in some place. Onward. It is August 13th. We have published Strut. The summer is drawing to a close. It's time to see your family, go to the beach, lie down in the sun, read a dumb book, and not be worried about your old wireless bill clonking on into your inbox with a gigantic fee and ruining everything. That's why you should consider switching to Mint Mobile. Dana Stevens is on vacation, having fun, drinking Mai Tais, doing God knows what in the sand somewhere. And probably part of why is that she has been testing out Mint Mobile and has been loving how it works for her as a mobile product. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/culture. That's mintmobile.com/culture. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, before we move on to our next topic, a brief moment of business. This week for our Slate Plus members, we're going to interview Dan Kois about creating the game Slate Pairs, which just went live a couple weeks ago and is a very fun and interesting and kind of weird game. We'll talk about how it came about and the various iterations that took place along the way, and whether or not Dan, in fact, knows the meaning of the word pipit and whether it matters. If you're listening to this feed, it might mean you are not yet Slate Plus subscribers, and you should be. Slate Plus offers a host of benefits, including ad-free versions of this show, bonus segments of this show, ad-free versions and bonus segments of a host of other wonderful Slate podcasts, and, of course, the opportunity to read unlimited Slate content on its site, and more to the point, the opportunity to support Slate and its important work. To sign up for Slate Plus and to get those benefits, you can go to slate.com/culture plus. And if you sign up there, you give us a little boost as the people who wooed you over. So again, it's Slate Plus. You should join slate.com/culture plus. Hawaiian history gets blockbuster treatment in Chief of War, Apple TV Plus's sprawling new drama from Jason Momoa and co-creator Thomas Pa'a-Sibit. Momoa stars as a warrior caught up in the fight to unify the islands under local rule as non-native explorers and their weapons, technology, and colonial ambitions begin to encroach. The show boasts a deep bench of Polynesian talent, gorgeously recreated Hawaiian outfits and objects, and is largely in Hawaiian. So for that reason, our clip today is going to be an excerpt of the trailer, which is suboptimal in some ways, but will at least give you a sense of both the tone of the show and Hans Zimmer's intense score.
Kaiana is the fist of our people. We will need him to face the troubles that come our way.
I feel like the gods are against me.
Our gods are the same in that way.
Dan, among your many unusual areas of expertise and authority, in addition to now game designer, is that you lived in Hawaii for a time and also wrote a book about a Hawaiian musician. So we're going to start with you. In your view, how does this show do at capturing both Hawaiian history and your attention?
I'm so interested in how Jason Momoa chose to tell this story. The Hawaii dilettantes like me, when I watch this show, I'm like, my ears perk up when I hear a name that I recognize, and I always recognize it because it's someone who a bunch of highways and shopping malls were named after in Hawaii. Like, I'm like, oh, Kahumanu, that's a highway on the Big Island. She must be really important. Kamehameha, oh, right. He's the king. People who live in Hawaii definitely already know the contours of the story and know where it's going. But for me, I'm sort of a hanger-on on this history. But what is really interesting, I think, about the decision Momoa made is that the character he's playing, Kaiana, this warrior, this chief of war, is not one of those guys. He's not that legendary figure. He's real, and we know some things about him. But like, you could imagine a version of this show they made with Jason Momoa playing King Kamehameha, who brought all the islands together, and he gave himself that role, and he gets to like wear that mantle and come out triumphant. But instead, he gave himself the role with way less mythology attached to it, but for which they can invent a lot more kind of heroic business. And honestly, that is a smart move, I think. It doesn't require him to do more than he's actually capable of doing. And it allows the show to like get this kind of revenge engine going, which isn't actually present in the sort of broader historical tale that they're telling. So that's sort of the attempt to shogunise it, it seems, to have this lightly imagined, lightly based on reality story at the center of it that's meant to be very personal in the midst of these real life historical events. And that basically works for me, I think. I have other things to say about this, but I want to hear what you guys think of this show and whether it basically works for you.
I really liked this. I mean, I loved Shogun. I think the thing that I love about this and Shogun, which do feel like both very astute Game of Thrones variants to me, is that they understand what made the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones a good show. And they are also both committed to a telling of culture, or a display of culture and appreciation of culture, that makes makes mostly, no endeavors to explain itself to the audience. It forces you to, this show in particular forces you to mostly read subtitles the way that lots of Shogun does. And there's a lot of cultural stuff that is never necessarily explained. And I absolutely love that. It feels like a window into something real, into a real, even if it is folkloric, into a real folkloric telling of history, of culture, of story. And I love that. I did have the sort of feeling while watching it that this is a show my dad would love. It feels very much like a dad's show in a way that, and I say that with so much love.
Received.
Yeah, I mean, I think dads, they love the Viking and the warrior and the sort of quasi-political but also very lengthy battle scene type show. And it does give you that, but it is also beautiful. It is really interesting, both politically and visually. And I mean, it's also just fun to watch so many beautiful people be beautiful in their own way, and to also sort of understand or get a glimpse at how they approach religion and all of these sort of different things. Yeah, I don't know. I really had fun with it. I most likely will finish it. I don't know if I'll be in a rush to finish it, but I will definitely finish it. And I am very happy when, I don't know, unlikely heroes, that being Jason Momoa, get sort of carte blanche to tell their own stories and actually make a meal out of it, and, decide to take every ounce of resources for what they can. And this feels like a product of that. And so, yeah, it's great.
I loved a lot about this in that I love that it's what Jason Momoa is doing with his time and talent, and it is such an interesting history, and I am in favor, I think, of the notion of taking global history and turning it into really interesting storytelling. Like, why make Game of Thrones about a fictional realm,
right,
when there are so many wild, epic historical battles and conflicts and encounters that you could tell the story of? And I think, one of the things that was really admirable about Shogun, although I have mixed feelings about that show in the end, is that it tells it privileges drama in a way over politics. And so there are a wide array of good and flawed and hubristic and insane characters across the conflict in different directions. And that's, one of the beautiful things that drama can do, right? Is remind you of the mishmash of humans at the core of any story, and the weird intersection between what they're doing as individuals with characters and choices and what's happening to them structurally by forces that they can't control. Like that, the drama of that and the question of how anything ever happens is like one of the interesting things, right, about historical fiction. In this show, I felt like it was slow. Like, I felt like the first 3 episodes are somewhat ponderous in a way that bummed me out, because I feel like the potential and the promise here is so exciting.
Even though so much happens.
A lot happens.
Yeah.
Somehow the like rhythm, the tone, there's a lot of like deliberating. He spends a lot of Momoa's character Kaina spends a bunch of time deliberating whether to be pulled back into. He's a reluctant chief of war who is repulsed by the warring between the island kingdoms. We arrive on Hawaii when there are 4 separate kingdoms governing the islands, and Kaina is of Maui, but is kind of hiding out on Kauai, with his pals and hunting for great white sharks very cinematically. That part's exciting. And then gets pulled back into a conflict, but maybe under false pretenses. And then he uses his skills at violence in something that he ends up finding reprehensible. And yeah, there is a lot that happens. And yet somehow scenes and conversations have this very static feeling of like people sitting. I don't know. Am I alone in finding this? Like it was a little.
No. It's
No,
the
I agree.
action
Yeah.
scenes are action filled, and the talking scenes are so unbelievably like everyone's wearing concrete shoes.
Yeah, they don't do the thing where they drive the action forward or they trigger things, and then but then the set of characters that's coming into focus slowly is really interesting and lively. And I suspect I'm also inclined to keep watching because I suspect that the story will just only get more interesting as it goes along. I will also say, as an even more dilettantish Hawaii dilettante than Dan, just someone who's been there a couple times on vacation, I'm very curious about the locations, because it's shot partially in Hawaii and partially in New Zealand, both places where you, Dan, have spent time. And there are definitely some scenes that are supposed to be on the Big Island that are clearly shot in New Zealand. And as someone who has a real fondness for the Big Island, I was just like, woo, how do you make a show about Hawaii and pretend this is the Big Island? This does not look at all like the Big Island, which looks like Mars.
Well, I think Hawaii itself is a little bit torn about this right now, especially I know a lot of people, a lot of actors and film people and technicians in Hawaii, and people are like a little up in arms that it's not that they shot half of it in Hawaii and half of it in New Zealand. It's that they shot for a month in Hawaii, and then the production company was like, this is too expensive, you're out. And they shot the entire rest of this series in New Zealand, a place that unthinkably is somehow cheaper to shoot in than Hawaii. They hired some Hawaiian actors, so they got jobs. They also hired just like random Hawaiians, like the guy who plays Kamehameha was the coach of the Waimea high school paddling team. And Jason Momoa saw him at a regatta and was like, you're Kamehameha. But a lot of the actors are Kiwi. A lot of the actors are from elsewhere in Polynesia or the United States. And so we have the situation where this is the first big show about Hawaiian history like ever made. But simultaneously, this is the first time in 20 years that no TV show at all is filming in Hawaii. Like there's this big revival that started with Lost and that Hawaii Five-0 series that was really bolstering both the local economy and the local art scene. And that has just basically evaporated, and the entire industry is going down the tubes. And so you have these quotes from the head of the local IATSE union, who's like, this is a treatise on how the continued extraction of values of these lands is perpetuated today by some of the most well-meaning people. But then also, people in Hawaii are also going crazy about this series. Like the idea of a big budget TV series in Olelo, Hawaii, the Hawaiian language, that's telling the stories of these legendary characters who also were real kings, real indigenous kings and queens. Like, that's unbelievably important to Hawaiian people. Like, people in Hawaii have been dreaming of something like this since the Native Hawaiian Renaissance in the 1970s. And in some ways, in a place like Hawaii, where there's like a real healthy appreciation for cheesiness, the silliness of the show makes it even better, like all the abs and the battles and lassoing a shark. Like, finally, Hawaiians have a historical epic to call their own, and they even got a Hans Zimmer score. And so I also find that somewhat inspiring and moving that Jason Momoa, of all people, is the one who got a gigantic corporation to spend like $300-400 million to tell Native Hawaiian stories in the Native Hawaiian language. Like, that is great. And I will ride with this show forever just based on that, no matter how muddled or messy or sub-Shogun its characters are. Like, I'm really happy to watch that happen. And I can only imagine that as all these characters that have been somewhat ponderously set up start intersecting with each other, and all these bowling balls that have set up start getting knocked over, that there's going to be some real juice given how much of a budget they shot this thing with.
It is expensive, and yet it's a lot of world to set up. Like, the costumes are incredible. In addition to all of the butt-bearing loincloths, they wear a lot of ceremonial headdresses and capes that are constructed from bird feathers. I presume not actual endangered EEV feathers, but they look like the feathers of specific beautiful Hawaiian birds that I have seen.
And the makeup team must have, I'm sure that plenty of the actors do have traditional tattoos, but I'm also sure that plenty of the actors had to have traditional tattoos added, or perhaps, more time-specific tattoos added. And so I'm sure that the makeup team has also been doing, a big heft of a job.
They are earning their money.
The kind of practical craftsmanship in the props and costumes is incredible. And then the combination of the location weirdness. And then sometimes there are just these backdrops that you're like, that is looks like a literal painted backdrop from old Hollywood. Like, it's like the funny uncanniness. And I felt that in Shogun too. It was like expensive but cheap in the way that its production values looked. So that was a little bit of a blocker. But I feel fond of this show, and I'm curious to see where it goes, even if it was not immediately arresting. So the show is Chief of War, created in many respects.
Terrible title. I cannot remember the title of the series to save my life. Chief of Thrones? King of Chief?
War.
It's interesting to not to lean into Hawaii. Like, so many Hawaii shows lean into the Hawaii-ness, like
Hawaii 5-0.
And this is why it's such a great dad's show, because dads all over will be like, yeah, that chief, that war, that show.
I love Chief of Thrones.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, it's Chief of War. It's on Apple. It has many marvelous actors and performances in it. You should check it out.
Mamá, papá, mi cuerpo crece a un ritmo alarmante y la ropa que me compren ahora me quedará muy pequeña muy pronto. Pero su billetera no tiene que sufrir por la moda con los precios bajos de la vuelta a clases de Amazon. Amazon, gasta menos, sonríe más.
You come to the New Yorker Radio Hour for conversations that go deeper with people you really want to hear from, whether it's Bruce Springsteen or Questlove or Olivia Rodrigo. Liz Cheney, or the godfather of artificial intelligence, Geoffrey Hinton, or some of my extraordinarily well-informed colleagues at The New Yorker. So join us every week on The New Yorker Radio Hour, wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's the 10th anniversary of Hamilton's Broadway debut, and the New York Times marked the occasion with an interesting piece from Daniel Pollock-Pelsner, who is the author of a forthcoming book about Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I believe a sometime listener to this show. His piece explores how Hamilton has aged and asks, quote, have the tumult and backlash of the ensuing decade rendered the Hamilton consensus a fantasy, and the musical itself a monument to naive liberal optimism? Daniel concludes no, but we thought it might be interesting to discuss ourselves and recount our first encounters and recent thoughts about Hamilton. As we were planning the show and debating possible topics, Nadira was wearing a very chic blazer and glam silver earrings, and we asked why she was all dolled up, and she said she was going to Hamilton that very night with her mom. So, Nadira, I want to start with you and hear about kind of your first and most recent encounters with Hamilton.
Yeah, I had been a fan of the show since it first came out, or I should say actually since the cast recording first came out, when the show itself was made more accessible to the masses who weren't able to see it on stage. I was in undergrad at the time, and I do vividly remember the person who was like, hey, you should check this out. Throughout my entire life, I've been a massive fan of both theater, musicals, and rap and hip hop. And so it really was the perfect convergence of the two for me. Fell in love with the show. Never got a chance to see it on stage until last week. And it was amazing. I cried twice. It is still good. And I think when, I've seen the Disney Plus Pro shot, of the original cast a number of times. And I was always sort of worried that if it wasn't the original cast that I was seeing, then maybe the show wouldn't hold up. But the show holds up.
Whose voices you have embedded in your DNA at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I told my mom was that something that I've learned now living in New York and seeing lots of not original casts of very famous shows is that if the show is good, it'll hold up. And it was lovely. We all loved it. We went with a sort of large group and everyone had a great time. And it is really interesting to be aware of how cringy the show has become to people, or how cringy Lin-Manuel Miranda has become to people. And I do think sometimes people conflate those two things. And also how good the show is, and also how relevant some parts of it still are. For some reason, we still have to clap and cheer at the immigrants we get the job done line, right? Like there are some things that unfortunately have circled back around or never left and are still very prevalent in terms of the meaning of the show. But I got emotional because as a lifelong hip hop fan, to see, and also a lifelong theater fan, to see that hip hop treatment on a traditional Broadway stage is actually as arresting and beautiful and somehow wonderful, and, seems like it couldn't be done as people said it was when the show first came out. During the song My Shot, when they start drumming on the table, I welled up because that's still something that kids do today and still something that I did. And, we have this sort of resurgence of the rap group Clips just released a new album, and we have this resurgence of older hip hop heads coming back in the game and, releasing music. And I don't know, it just feels like in this era where Clips is, like pounding on tables as percussion in their NPR Tiny Desk concert, and Hamilton is still out here. Like there's still this energy of rap artists, I don't know, making the art, the original form of the art, known and appreciated in all different forms and ways. And yeah, it's a good show. Like the lines are still good. The rap is still dense and difficult and hard to carry. And when it's done well, it's incredible. And I don't know, like people suck. The show's good. Stop being mean.
All right. A rousing defense from Nadira. Dan, I'm curious to hear about your first encounters with the show and your most recent thoughts on it.
I saw it at the Public, a phrase that Rian Johnson has ruined forever.
Wait, what?
Because Don Johnson says it in Knives Out. He goes, "Immigrants, we get the job done." Saw it at the Public. I loved it. I was a huge evangelist for it. I told everyone I know that they had to see this thing. I was so proud when I went to Broadway. I had, in fact, really loved Lin-Manuel Miranda since I saw a workshop of In the Heights many years before that, when he was still trying to get financing for that show. And was so happy that he had taken this big leap from telling what was essentially a good, interesting personal story infused with his own life and background, and then doing the thing that a really good theater artist, playwright, composer ought to do, which is with the next thing, do something bigger that's still informed by your own story and interests, but is trying to meld those with a more ambitious story. And it seemed like there could hardly be a more ambitious thing to do than what he tried to do with Hamilton. And over the years, I have found Lin-Manuel both inspiring and annoying in different ways, and I have been compelled by some arguments about the corniness of Hamilton while still feeling like I still really love this object. And I'm somewhat convinced by Daniel Pollock-Pelsner's argument that the musical itself has a set of messages that are a lot more complex than the politics of the last 10 years have sort of simplified them to. You know, I remember thinking at the time, oh, is this musical reverent to the founding fathers? Is it skeptical about them? You know, is a Republican who sees this show going to just be annoyed by people of color playing the founding fathers, or are they going to find something legitimately inspiring in the inspiration that the show finds in our country's complicated history? And it strikes me, thinking about the show now and the way that people talk about it, that what the show is really about is not only American history or the founding fathers, but it's a challenge to reconsider and reframe some of the most calcified ideas about American history and about the founding fathers, which, it happens, is exactly the thing that the current administration is least interested in us doing. That's what they most want us not to do with American history. And so I find myself 10 years later sort of freshly invigorated by and inspired by the project of the show itself. The casting of non-traditional actors in these parts, the use of hip-hop and non-stilted, non-quasi-historical language to tell this story. Like, I find that all freshly interesting in an era in which we're being urged once again to accept the old versions of these stories and the old ideas of who these people were. Not that they were humans with fallible human flaws, but that they were the founders whose ideas should be simplified and respected forever.
I also saw it at the Public.
Immigrants, we get the job done.
And I will tell one story about it, which is that as we were going into the row, my husband was ahead of me, and then he like stopped in the middle of the crowded row and like pushed me to go ahead of him. And I was like, what the hell? Like, this is logistically, why are you doing this? And then he was just like, just do it. And then I saw that what he had done is made it so that I was sitting next to our far side seatmate, who was Victor Garber, beloved theater actor Victor Garber, who is famous to me at the time for being Sidney Bristow's dad on Alias, a show that I really adored. And so he had just been like trying to step on toes while giving me a chance to sit next to Sidney's dad. And that I had my own set of delighted, astounded responses to the first time I saw it at the Public. But it was very fun to do it next to Victor Garber, who was blown away and kept being like, oh, bravo. Like, literally, it was like the most like out loud approving theater compatriot I've ever sat next to. So anyway, that's my obnoxious public story.
Victor Garber, go to the Union Station movie theater and yell at a screen with me.
Yes, I want to see The Naked Gun with Victor Garber. Great idea. So, you know, I remember just being astounded by its craft at the beginning. And last night in prep for this segment, I was like, let's watch it again. So with my husband and sons, I watched the first act on Disney Plus. I watched that when it first came out. I think we talked about it. Hadn't watched it since, and haven't had Hamilton in the rotation. It was like I don't know, we went through a phase 4 or 5 years ago where it was like the music in the car for a while with the kids. And then I just haven't actually heard it in a minute. And what struck me last night was a similar sense to you, Nadira, of screw the haters. This is an incredible piece of culture. But really its attention to like the emotional valence and selfhood of these people. And that question of like, how is it that individual human selves and characters intersect with historical moments and opportunities to make things go the way that they go? And the dyad of Hamilton and Burr and the sort of opposition between brash, sometimes reckless ambition and thoughtful, sometimes overly conservative caution is like a beautiful human dilemma. Like that's true in everyone's life. And I remember at the time being moved not just by what the show posits about, how nations should be governed and who should be in charge of what, but by its wisdom about how we live and what we want and how we act on how we feel. And like the roundedness and yearning and mistakes that all of these characters make are beautiful. And it is that Pollock Pelsner includes in his piece some of Lin-Manuel Miranda's comments on the musical from his work on the book. And at one point, Miranda says, "I knew I was writing a tragedy," but like it really is a tragedy where their characters inform all of their downfalls. And I'm sorry, it's crazy to get all that done in one show that works and has a bunch of bangers in it. Like it's an astounding achievement. Again, contrarian. We've come all the way around to the backlash, to the backlash, to the backlash. But Slate's contrarian take on Hamilton, guys, is that it still slaps.
This segment is really making me think, what is a legacy? Planting seeds in a garden you'll never see.
I think, well, the big question that I had when I really started to become aware of the Hamilton backlash, of it sort of being firmly considered cringe now, is doesn't this just happen to everything that's popular at some point in time, right? Everything that has this sort of monoculturistic mass appeal has to walk through the fires of so many years later, people being like, hey, actually, this thing isn't as good as we thought it was, or we're more elevated than it is now. And so therefore it's beneath us. And, it just has to make it through that awkward period. And none of the sort of backlash to this show felt like it was occurring because of a sort of political moment we're in or a failure of a promise, as much as it felt like a product of the natural cycles of the way that we appreciate and esteem culture and media.
But we're talking a lot about this specific kind of backlash, whatever, Twitter backlash or cognoscenti backlash. But that is not actually the backlash that probably is most culturally relevant to the show. And that's not the backlash that Daniel Pollock Pelsner's piece is about. It's about right-wing backlash to this show and to the idea of the show, which started when the cast addressed Mike Pence from the stage in 2016. It's astonishing to me to think that the show had only been on for a year. It had only been on Broadway for a year when Mike Pence was already the vice president elect. And the show is so closely identified with the Obama era, in part because material from it was first debuted at the Obama White House several years before the show opened to the public, where I saw it. But that it actually didn't open until the very end of that era and right near the beginning of this new hell era that we're living in. And so thinking of the show as like very briefly being like the one thing that Republicans and Democrats could agree on, and then immediately being transformed by this malignant culture into just yet another thing that Democrats and Republicans argue about, because now it is inconceivable for a Republican to think that it's even interesting to cast Black people as our founding fathers or to treat our history with any kind of semi-questioning interrogative pose is like a real bummer, but also makes me want to ride to the show's defense even more. What the show is doing is not what the current opponents of the show say it's doing. It's not a woke view on American history. It's way more interesting and compelling and naughty than that. And boy, would I be glad if more works of art were doing this in interesting ways.
The show feels like an interesting object to look at this moment in terms of our political power, because the system that they were fighting to build is like a system that is still both in operation and in the process of being actively dismantled by our president.
And also has always been broken because of specific choices they made then.
Yes. And has never, but like the notion 10 years ago that it's like, this was a good idea and maybe we can keep fighting to get it to live up to its promise. I feel like at the current moment, it's more like, is this a good idea?
Or save the little bits of this that were a good idea.
It's like the show, I don't know if the show has as much to say about where we are, not because of naivete, but just because of how history has changed. I will say one of my favorite things looking back at all this too is just like thinking about the ride Ron Chernow took on this. Sweet guy just tried to write a dad book for all the heads who left Chief of War, and then suddenly he's like the grandfather of Hamilton, the musical phenomenon.
The grandfather of the new American musical.
It's just you never know where life's going to take you.
So true.
All right, Hamilton forever, guys. It's the best. Thank you, Daniel Pollock-Pelsner, for writing a smart piece. I will also say thank you, Jody Rosen, also a VFFOP, longtime culture critic and longtime frequent guest of our show, who longtime listeners will know, who grabbed me, Dana, and Steve by the lapel early on after he saw the show at the Public to say, we must see it. And I know helped foment all of our enthusiasm for it. I had asked him to send us a voice note reflecting on this question, just because he's been such an advocate for and writer on Hamilton over this decade. And he sent us one that was so eloquent, but also so long. We couldn't use it in the middle of this segment, but we really want you all to hear it. So we're going to tag it on at the end of the show after our endorsements and credits. So please stick around to hear Jody Rosen's marvelous thoughts on the question of Hamilton's ongoing relevance.
A little Rosen Easter egg for the Rosen heads out there.
Mm-hmm. Nothing better.
Hi, it's Willa Paskin, the host of Decodering. And we have a new episode for you all about an article of faith for many Americans.
It's shocking to me that there's this idea that all Britons have bad teeth. This is not a fringe opinion.
It certainly is not.
Why don't you get your teeth fixed?
I live in Britain. I don't want to stand out.
Well, British people have notoriously bad teeth, so...
But does the stereotype about British people have any validity? And if not, why do we think it does?
I was quite keen to sort of dispel that because it's a bit irritating, Americans always thinking their teeth are brilliant.
Might there be something equally strange about American teeth?
They look very, fake. Yeah. Whereas here, I've always had patients tell me, oh, don't make my dentures too white. They actually call it horse teeth.
Find out on Slate's Decoder Ring, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Let's endorse.
Okay, so, I usually do a musical endorsement. And as of last week, Ghanaian American singer Amare is back. She's an artist that's known for her blend of pop, hip-hop, R&B, and, of course, Afro beats, with lyrics talking about hot girl shit, partying, sex, relationships, and more from a sort of gender fluid, sexuality fluid perspective. She's known for her sort of super high pitched, airy, melodic voice. Her standout 2023 sophomore album, Fountain Baby, spans so many genres that there's both a song with a Pharrell Neptune sample and a song with an emo rock breakdown. It received rave reviews. It was one of my favorite albums of that year, and now she's back. If Fountain Baby was about her sexuality and the ups and downs of dating in the modern era, then her latest album, Black Star, which released last week, is about donning a miniskirt, perhaps partaking in some contraband, and making eyes across the dance floor with a pretty stranger and seeing what it could turn into. The production is fantastic. She's cheeky and clever and super fun. It features artists like Pink Pantheress, Charlie Wilson, and even Naomi Campbell. And it's, just a sexually explicit and fun treat. So yeah, that's my endorsement. Black Star by Amare.
All right, I'm going to check it out. All right. Dan has requested to go last, defying all convention and proving just what a flexible and nimble show we are here. I will go
like
next.
the god of chief.
You know who you are like? You know who you are like? Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Because my endorsement, you just wear all black and say chaos all the time, which is my new response to everything. Now that I have seen Jurassic Park at the Hollywood Bowl on Friday night, which was just a delightful experience. So the Hollywood Bowl is LA's famous outdoor amphitheater, one of the places that you can go in the city where you will feel magically elevated by what a marvelous place this is to live. And sometimes they show movies and then they have the LA Phil come and perform the score. The Jurassic Park score is a John Williams classic. And so we went with a few friends and kids and watched the movie. And it really holds up for a rewatch. I mean, I think it would hold up on your phone or your DV screen, but it was pretty fun to watch it with. I think it's like 17,000 people at the bowl, and it was completely sold out. So that you want to watch a movie with people packed to the gills responding, Dan.
That's
come on out here. The Hollywood way. I feel like everyone I've met in LA was there. And it's so uncanny. Most of the special effects from 1993 would not hold up, but there are actually so few of them in that movie.
Right.
Like, instead of going for many mediocre effects, Spielberg does so much with suggestion, illusion, focusing on people's response to and the human fear about the monsters that you only see the glimpses, and the glimpses are pretty gorgeous.
He's always been good at that. Like, that's what Jaws was too. Like, he's so good at understanding what the technology is good at doing right now and what the story needs, and then making sure that his movies are perpetual.
Yes, in fact, and his movies are so perpetual that I had a bizarre encounter with the Jurassic Park score earlier this year when my sons were checking out the videos for potential summer camps to go to. And we were choosing between some camps in Maine and some camps in Central California. And then some of their friends were going to a camp in Wisconsin. And so we went to check out the Wisconsin camp's website, and it showed the kids like driving into the gates of the camp. And my husband and son clocked that the music was the Jurassic Park score. And it was like, dee, 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 dee. And I was like, they're all going to get eaten. Like, it was such a weird, I mean, it does have the right tone of like, we're about to go on a beautiful adventure.
Right.
And then if you actually clock the sound cue, the implication is your children will be murdered by monsters.
That is
Anyway,
a suggestion that the camp is located on whatever that pasture land is where they're housing the reincarnated, de-extincted direwolves, and that there's other creatures there as well.
I think maybe the assumption was that the people watching this video would not recognize the sound cue in the way that my husband and son did. But anyway, we didn't send our kids to that camp. Some of their friends did go, and they did come back uneaten.
I was about to say, did they make it back alive?
They apparently it was not actually a meaningful sound cue. But anyway, all right. So my endorsements are Jurassic Park really holds up. My sub point is go see movies at the Hollywood Bowl. My sub point is a good way to go through life is to wear all black and just say chaos anytime anything random happens. All right, Dan, now it's your turn.
I endorse quitting your job.
Whoa.
I used to be a guy who quit jobs all the time, like at the drop of a hat. Like, I would quit if I was like, I don't like this guy, or I'm having a kid and New York Magazine is insufficiently appreciative of my time, or whatever. But then I worked at Slate for 13 and a half years because it was a great place to work, and I had a really good job, and I loved it. But nevertheless, I quit. I was like, I've been doing this so long. I wonder what it would be like to do other stuff. So this is my last week at Slate. I'm very excited to rethink my whole life and to transform how I spend my days. I auditioned for a choir last night. Why not? I've got books to write. I've got weird personal projects to launch. I got a lot of things I'm excited about doing. But anyways, quitting, it's not right for everyone, but it just might be right for you.
Dan, I was trying to figure out whether this news was public when I was drafting my script last night and figuring out how to intro you, and it seemed like it wasn't. So I just played along and blithely introduced you as Slate writer Dan Kois. But yes, this is momentous. Can I go to the first question of our listeners? Will you still come on the Slate Culture Gabfest?
I will forever be a VFFFFPPPP, if allowed, of the Slate Culture Gabfest.
All right. Well, the invitation stands, and so do all of those initials. It's bittersweet because it was such a treat for me to work with you at Slate, and it's been such a joy to see your work in Slate in the years since I have become a more tangential, orbital figure in the Slate universe. But I'm thrilled to see all the things you're going to do next, including, I guess, writing a book about hearts, which we'll get to in our Plus segment, but lightly in an interview about Pairs, the new game Dan created for Slate on his way out the door. He's like, well, I'm working on a book about hearts, so I'm thinking about gameplay. Of course you're working on a fucking book about hearts. It's ridiculous.
Why not? The world needs it.
In addition to listening to our Plus segment on Pairs, what better way to mark Dan's transition to the next realm than to sign up for Slate Plus to hear him talk about the game he invented, Pairs, on Slate. But also you can read his magnum opus about Chili's, one of the few fast casual restaurants that is apparently ascendant, I learned, thanks to Dan telling me about his story. So check out the work of Dan Kois. I also endorse it. All right, I think that's it for us for today. You'll find links to some of the things we talked about today on our show page. That's slate.com/culturefest. And you can email us at culturefest@slate.com. Our introductory theme music is by the composer Nicholas Bertel. Our producer today is Benjamin Frisch, and our PA is Daniel Hirsch. Our outro is Jody Rosen dropping smart thoughts about Hamilton, so don't forget to stick around for those. For Dan Kois and Nadira Goffe, I'm Julia Turner. Thanks so much for listening.
Hello, Culture Gabfest from Brooklyn, New York City. The greatest city in the world, as the poet said. I think it was late April in 2015 when my editor at T, the New York Times style magazine, asked me, or actually really ordered me to attend a musical at the Public Theater on Lafayette Street downtown. I remember complaining to my family about having to spend a Sunday afternoon in the theater watching what sounded like the goofiest show imaginable, a hip-hop musical about the life of Alexander Hamilton. I'm not really a big musical theater guy or really much of a theater person at all. It was news to me that this show was even a big deal. When I got to the Public, I took my seat next to an older gentleman and did a kind of double take. It was Carl Bernstein, of all people. Jeffrey Wright was there in the audience too. This was the last performance of Hamilton's run at the Public before it moved uptown to Broadway. Anyway, I guess you could say the rest is history. I called my wife in intermission and said something like, I think this is one of the greatest works of art I've ever encountered in any medium, something like that. I remember being especially blown away by the staging of Satisfied. It's Quiet Uptown. That song made me weep. Yeah, my mind was blown. Obviously, we've taken a journey collectively with Hamilton over 10 years. And I've often found myself feeling defensive about my love of Hamilton, not defensive about the criticisms of the show as a kind of Obama-era artifact whose historiography is problematic, whose racial optimism is naive, whose politics are neoliberal. All those criticisms are valid, I think, and seem to me to make the show more interesting, not less. But I've found myself feeling defensive about Hamilton as a work of art, especially as a consensus has taken hold among a certain class of critics, I guess you'd say, that the show is, irredeemably corny and gauche, and an embarrassment in particular for its cheesy use of hip-hop. The show was, as you may remember, attacked pretty mercilessly by by rap hipsters and critics. And this hit me where it counts as a self-styled rap hipster in my own right. As far as corny goes, it's like, okay, what do you think a Broadway show is? Corny is the point. Corny is the alpha and the omega of the form. Of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a goofy, earnest, eager beaver presence on the cultural scene. He's a theater kid par excellence. But what kind of sticks with me most about Hamilton is the conceptual coup of embracing rap, just as Broadway composers of earlier eras drew in the pop song forms of their times. Again, the point here isn't that Miranda is a quote-unquote great rapper or anything like that. Lin-Manuel Miranda spits sick bars. No, the point is that he recognized the potency, the thematic potency of using rap, the supreme mode of musical expression for, for stylish self-mythologizers, to tell this highly stylized, mythic tale of the nation's founders who were, after all, so prone to running off at the mouth and who were forever embroiled in beefs, etc. And I think Miranda also recognized that rap form itself, the fact that rap songs make so much more room for lyrics than traditional sung songs, which are, sung songs are kind of hemmed in by the way melodies operate within meter. But Miranda saw that this roomier form was especially well suited to musical theater songs, to the narrative and the expository and character building work that theater songs do. It was kind of just a perfect match hidden in plain sight. Gilbert and Sullivan had the same intuition with their patter songs, I guess. But yeah, Miranda took it to another level. So anyway, yeah, Hamilton. Good show. Check it out.